I am presenting Union Gospel Press's Sunday School Lesson number 5, Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. The lesson is entitled Jesus' First Miracle. Lesson text comes from John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. Related scriptures are John chapter 12, verses 37 through 41, and Matthew 12, 38 through 42. The place is Cana. The time is 26 AD. So far this quarter, Jesus, God's incarnate Son, has been born into this world and has also begun calling his disciples. Now in John 2, 1 through 11, we see him move into his public ministry with his first miracle at a wedding in Cana. And with this miracle, we are beginning to get to know the real Jesus of Nazareth. Today's aim. Facts. To understand Jesus' manner, mission, and method so that we can get to know him better. Principle. To be people who are well acquainted with Jesus' motives and actions so that we can be the type of disciples that please him in our modern context. Application. To realize that Jesus' miracles were ultimately intended to bring focus upon God's kingdom principles and to seek to do the same by our words and actions. Illustrating the lesson. As people age, most have the unfortunate experience of realizing that their vision is not what it used to be. They may find themselves squinting while they read or simply needing to be closer to the page to see the print. Yet with the help of a simple magnifying glass, vision becomes less of a strain as the words become amplified. Hold a magnifying glass up to what you are reading now and see the difference it makes. Similarly, make sure that you are looking to Jesus to amplify your view of the Father. Jesus' ways, his words, and even his thoughts all help us to see and know the Father better. Practical points. 1. When we have a need, great or small, we should first go to Jesus for help. John 2, 1 through 3. 2. God's responses to our pleas for help are always for our good and his glory. Verse 4, verse 11. 3. Obeying Jesus is always best, regardless of what he might require of us. Verse 5. 4. God often uses his own obedience in answering our requests. Verses 6 through 8. 5. We can trust Jesus to provide the very best when he responds to our requests. Verses 9 through 10. 6. Every acquaintance provides opportunities for Jesus to display his glory. Verse 11. Golden text. This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. John 2:11. Today we have 2 lesson outlines. The first is an unexpected need coming from John 2, 1 through 5. The second is an unexpected solution. John 2, 6 through 11. Introduction. John includes a lot of information in his gospel not found in the other gospels. What makes his record of particular significance is his emphasis on a divine perspective. That is, Jesus is presented as the Son of God. John wanted his readers to believe in Jesus, so the material he included was pertinent to exactly who Jesus is. Notice the names and titles John applies to Jesus. The Word and God, 1:1. Life, verse 4. Light, verse 7. Fullness, verse 16. Christ, verse 17. Lord, verse 23. Lamb of God, verse 29. And Son of God, verse 34. The disciples were gaining insight into who Jesus is through all this information. But the miracle at the wedding in Cana would give them another level of understanding. Their spiritual growth was gradual, as it is or has been for all of us. It was necessary for the disciples to learn who Jesus was before they could begin to understand the reason he had come. We will continue to see the same sequence in the Gospel of John. Jesus introduces who he is before he provides a deeper understanding of what he has come to accomplish. An unexpected need. John 2:1. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Verse 2. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. Verse 3. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus saith unto him, They have no wine. Verse 4. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour has not yet come. Verse 5. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. Wedding. John 2:1-2. This is the first of 37 miracles done by Jesus as recorded in the four Gospels. It took place at a wedding in Cana located in Galilee. Jesus, the disciples following him thus far, and his mother were all invited. The mention of Mary indicates the wedding family were either very close friends or even relatives of hers. The fact is supported by the concern she expresses over supplying the festivities. So far, we have seen 5 men begin to follow Jesus. When John the Baptist pointed him out to 2 of his own followers, they left him and followed Jesus. We know one of them was Andrew, and we assume the other was John, the author of this gospel. Andrew found his brother Simon, who then also went to meet Jesus and began to follow him. The next day, Jesus found Philip, who immediately went to get his friend Nathanael. These 5 had been invited to the wedding because of their relationship with Jesus. Jesus was beginning his ministry and mission to proclaim the presence of the kingdom of God and his desire for people to be saved. He was doing so in fulfillment of his Father's will. So we know it was an extremely important mission, and he no doubt felt its urgency. Even so, here we see that he took time to attend a social event and take part in the festivities associated with it. Often God's servants feel it is a waste of time to be away from the important work they need to be doing. Close observation of Jesus' example, however, reveals that it is not only permissible, but actually important that we take time for social interaction with others. Such occasions may give us opportunities for witness that might not have opened for us otherwise. Remember also that Jesus took his disciples away for times of rest and relaxation. Problem. John 2:3-4. Mary became aware of what would have been considered a serious problem with the celebration, so she approached Jesus with it, informing him simply that the family had no more wine to serve. While we might tend to think such a need was merely due to poor planning, Middle Eastern culture took this particular matter very seriously. Under Jewish hospitality, running out of wine at a wedding was a cause for considerable shame and embarrassment. This would be a huge negative reflection on the host family. The host was financially responsible for caring for his guests and seeing that they were well entertained during the event. Weddings could last anywhere from a couple of days to a week in length. This was not a poor family who could not afford to host a wedding, so we can only speculate about what caused the shortage. Perhaps insufficient preparation had been made, or perhaps a supplier did not deliver on time. We can understand the difficulty in planning properly for such an event, not knowing for sure how many people might eat and drink. Nevertheless, the expectation was that the host family would provide for everyone who had been invited. Mary was rightly concerned for the family's reputation. Jesus' response to her strikes us at first as rather terse and cold. None of us today would address our mother as woman. It just sounds disrespectful. It was not, however, disrespectful in that culture, but rather a term of genuine endearment. The best example of this is Jesus' statement from the cross when he saw his mother and the disciples standing by whom he loved, and saith unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. John 19:26. At that moment, he was showing tender care toward her. As Jesus began his public ministry, his priorities in life began to change. In mentioning that his hour had not yet come, he was probably reminding Mary that only when the time was right for him to begin to reveal himself would he provide the kind of miraculous help she desired from him. Was she perhaps the hostess of the wedding? Was she merely being a typical mother, knowing her son could do something special if he wanted to? Whatever it was that Mary expected from Jesus, she now had to realize that they were operating on different levels. She had human concerns, but he had a divine mission. She could not assume his divine abilities were at her beck and call. For the most part, his powers were not meant for mundane purposes. Instructions, John 2:5. Mary showed a great deal of confidence in her son by what she said next to the servants. Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. She knew Jesus was more than able to do something about the need. If the servants did exactly what he instructed, perhaps he might be sovereignly disposed to easily resolve the situation. She also hoped that in light of how such embarrassment would affect the host family, he would indeed have compassion on them. Mary revealed her personal willingness to let Jesus take total charge of the situation. She had no intention of doing anything beyond bringing the need to his attention. In this, she showed her faith and spirit of submission. She made her supplication to him. Now it was up to him, and there would be no further need for her to interfere in any way. She was also completely undaunted by his initial apparent reluctance to intervene in the situation. Mary's command to the servants directed them to Jesus in expectation of an answer to the dilemma. What an example she is, therefore, to every believer who faces such difficulty in life. David wrote, Give us help from the trouble, for vain is the help of man. Psalms 108:12. Another psalmist wrote, It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. 118:8. Our natural propensity is to worry and fret and frantically search for solutions before turning to God. Mary's words are a good reminder for all of us in every situation. We should simply seek to do what Jesus says in all the circumstances of life. Even though she had no idea what he was going to do, if anything at all, she knew he was the one who really could do something if it was within his sovereign will to do so. An unexpected solution. Verse 6. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Verse 7. Jesus saith unto them, Fill the water pots with water, and they filled them up to the brim. Verse 8. And he saith unto them, Draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they bear it. Verse 9. When the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, he knew not whence it was. But the servants who drew the water knew. The governor of the feast called the bridegroom. Verse 10. And saith unto him, Every man at the beginning does set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then they which is worse. But thou hast kept the good wine until now. Verse 11. This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. Water pots. John 2:6-7. The Jews washed repeatedly before everything they did. Part of this was because they wanted to cleanse themselves of any possible defilement they might have received from Gentile contact. Unlike those of us today who are germaphobes, they were much more concerned about ritual cleanness than physical hygiene. Ceremonial washing was part of the purification process they practiced several times a day. This is why it was not unusual to find large basins and water pots sitting around in a Jewish home. These 6 water pots were made of stone, and each was able to contain 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Verse 6. This would translate to between 20 and 30 gallons per pot, making a grand total of somewhere between 120 and 180 gallons of water. Jesus told the servants to fill all these pots with water, and they did so up to the very brim. This would ensure that the wedding party would have plenty of wine to see them through. God always gives with an abundant generosity. John 3:34, Philippians 4:19, James 1:5. The more important point, however, is that Jesus manifested forth his glory and his disciples believed on him. John 2:11. Jewish tradition required several kinds of ceremonial washings. Strict Jews washed their hands before a meal, between courses, and after the meal. This purifying extended not only to washing hands, but also to washing cups and vessels. See Mark 7:3-4. Because the roads were not paved and people wore sandals, water was needed for foot washing. At a large Jewish wedding, a large amount of water would have been required. Water to wine. John 2:8-9. Jesus gave a second command after he saw that the water pots had been filled. Draw out now and bear unto the governor of the feast. Verse 8. The governor of the feast was probably comparable to what we would term the master of ceremonies. His responsibility would have included the seating of the guests and making sure everything relative to the wedding and activities associated with it were running smoothly. He was the person to keep everything orderly and under control. We might wonder how this governor may have been connected with the shortage of wine. It may have caused him some anxiety if he was even aware of it. With this miraculously created wine was brought to him, he would have had no idea where it came from. It was impossible to know at what point in time the water changed into wine. This has been discussed much, but we can only speculate. Some think it happened as the water went into the pots, while others think it happened when it was dipped out. That becomes a moot point when we focus on the change, however, and when the change was realized by those present. It seems likely that the only ones who knew what actually occurred were the servants, Jesus and his disciples and Mary. The governor certainly did not know because he was amazed when he tasted it. We know for certain that sometime between the pouring of the water into the pots and the tasting of it by the governor, it had turned into first-class wine. The miracle was a very quiet one in comparison to others Jesus would later perform. Manifested glory, John 2:10-11. When the governor of the feast tasted the wine, he immediately called for the groom and said to him, Every man at the beginning doth set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse. But thou hast kept the good wine until now. It is not difficult to understand this logic. Serve the highest quality wine first, and then after people's taste buds had become somewhat dulled, serve the cheaper wine. The governor, not knowing that a miracle had occurred, was amazed that the groom had done the opposite. To him it may have seemed a waste because the expensive wines would have made a better impression on the guests earlier in the festivities and put the groom in higher regard. What we learn is that whenever Jesus creates something, it will be of the highest quality. God does not make junk. His entire creative output is also very good. Genesis 1:31. It should also be noted that Jesus provided the wine to enable the wedding celebration to continue, not to encourage drunkenness. Wine was pretty much the only safe beverage to accompany food back then, since water could not be easily purified, and wine was often much lower in alcoholic content than today's wine. We are sometimes tempted to doubt God's goodness when we fail to see the reality of it in our lives. For example, David wrote this statement, "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart." Psalms 37:4. We tend to wonder about this statement when we do not seem to experience it in our lives. Instead of doubting God, however, we need to continually focus more on who he is and what his will might be for us. His timing will always be perfect, even though we might have to wait. What Jesus did at this wedding is referred to in John 2:11 as the beginning of miracles. The Greek word translated miracles is seimon, which means a wonder, sign, or token. This miracle revealed the miraculous divine power of Jesus. His miracles point to him as the Son of God. They were not just magic tricks, but rather evidence of his deity. Each miracle revealed his glorious identity. In this case, it caused his disciples to put their faith in him. Questions. 1. What was the occasion? Where was it taking place? And who was included among the guests? 2. What can Jesus' attendance at the wedding teach us? 3. Why was Mary so concerned that the host ran out of wine? 4. What did Jesus mean when he said his hour had not yet come? 5. What did Mary tell the servants to do, and why did she say this? 6. Why would there have been large water pots present at the wedding feast? 7. What did Jesus tell the servants to do? 8. Why is it important that they fill the pots to the brim? 9. How did the governor respond upon receiving the water that had been changed into wine by Jesus? 10. What was this miracle intended to accomplish, and what were the results? This concludes the Sunday School lesson for Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. Thank you for listening. God bless.